Can you believe we started Interview Boss in 2021?
Not really. It's insane. That's a lot of episodes and a lot of hours of talking.
Oh my gosh, it is. And if you're scrolling through all of our episodes, you might scroll straight past something that you really, really needed.
Yes, we're always getting messages from people asking us to do an episode on something, and I'm like, we already have.
So we've put together playlists to help you find the episodes that are exactly what you need, suited to your situation.
They're all categorized. If you're applying for jobs, we have episodes about resumes, cover letters, job ads. If you've been offered your dream job, we have episodes on resigning, exit interviews, and how to impress at your new company.
And we even have a very special playlist that's very popular for if you have an interview coming up immediately and you need just our most recommended hard-hitting episodes between now and then.
For all our last-minute listeners. It's all there for you. You can browse by category and check out all the playlists at interviewboss.com.au/podcast. People are going to look at my resume and be like, oh, 6 months off? You've lost all your skills. They must have vanished. Like, you are irrelevant. Who is she? Sending love to anyone else who's currently in lockdown. Stay sane. Let's get back into it. If you're new here, this is Interview Boss, the podcast. My name's Emma. I'm a third-year journalism student, and this is my sister Sarah, who is a HR and recruitment professional. And we've teamed up to give you guys all the tips, tricks, and behind-the-scenes knowledge to help you in your career.
Hey, Em, and hey, everyone.
To kick off this episode, we want to introduce you guys to a new little segment that's going to feature at the start of our episodes called Shoot Your Shot. We're rebranding the listener shoutouts to Shoot Your Shot because a great listener sent us some feedback about how the podcast has helped them, and at the end they said, so thanks for helping me shoot my shot. And we were like, oh my God, what a good student. He understood the assignment. He's listened to me say shoot your shot 5,000 times and it stuck. And yeah, like how fitting that has to be the name of the shoutouts now. This is the Shoot Your Shot segment. So Sarah, tell us, who shot their shot this week?
So this week's listener shout out goes to Alison, who had an interview recently for her dream communications job, and she got a job offer. She said she had the podcast on repeat to prepare, and her favourite episode was the storytelling episode because she was really worried about the tell me about yourself question. And Em, she gave you a specific mention because she said your little demo was really good to see the difference between the passion that you had when you were talking about it in a story. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and check it out.
Yeah, I think she said that she took from my little segment that it can be quite conversational rather than a recited perfect little read out thing. So that's great.
Talk like a human, you know. So congratulations, Alison. We hope you love your new job. And if we've helped you in your job search at all, send us an email or a DM and let us know. We'd love to share your experience so that we can help other listeners.
Woohoo! Thanks, Alison. So today we're going to kick off this episode. We're talking about how to talk about being fired or tricky, awkward gaps in your employment. So we actually got inspo for this episode. We had somebody named Eddie send us in his dilemma, and we thought this is so valuable. This has probably happened to so many people, so let's do an episode on it. So this is Eddie's story. I worked for a large, well-known Australian company for 26 years and considered myself a valued employee. To cut a long story short, I was blamed for something one of my staff did and my employment was unexpectedly terminated. How do I handle the why did you leave X company question? I was basically given no choice but to hand in my resignation, and I have a letter from my employer saying that I resigned. So,
yeah, this is a really tough one. And I've actually got personal experience in this. Anyone who's listened to my career story knows that my first ever job after uni at Hayes, I had my probation failed, so I was fired. And it's really, really hard in that situation to know, how am I going to talk about this? Like, how do I tell someone that I failed? Why would they hire me if they think, well, the person who knows you the best just got rid of you? And particularly, I can't imagine with Eddie's one, with 26 years. I mean, that's a long history with the one company.
Also tricky in his scenario that he really feels as though he wasn't at fault, like feels pretty hard done by. I think if it's a genuine thing that you can look back at and be like, wow, yes, I did the wrong thing. But even harder in a situation where you're like really feeling like that was unfair.
That's so
and
true.
now you've got to tell people.
Yeah, and I think in my situation, I was able to look back and go, oh, you know what? If I was making that decision nowadays, I would have gotten rid of me too.
Yeah.
Whereas with Eddie, yeah, you're right, Em. There's a lot of emotion there about, it was unfair, and
his
as much as
26 years proves that he was probably a great employee.
Yeah, that's right. And the fact that he resigned is probably, a good thing in the end, but it definitely wouldn't feel like that to him. So we've got 3 kind of main tips for Eddie, and we've already sent these to him, but we wanted to share these with you guys if anyone's in a similar situation.
Yeah, so jumping into tip number 1 here, we have addressing it head on by giving a small amount of detail is good. It can be maybe the knee-jerk response to try and cover it or not really want to talk about it, but just dealing with it head on and admitting that happened can be the best thing.
Yeah. I mean, as a manager or a, recruiter, HR, whatever, when you're doing an interview or when you're looking at someone's resume, if you can see that they left a company in May and it's now July that they're, interviewing, you kind of want to know, like, okay, why aren't you still there anymore? And it can be the elephant in the room a little bit if you don't bring it up. So that's why I'm saying address it head on, because if you don't, they will ask about it eventually, and then you're going to be kind of on the back foot, as opposed to saying, in your tell me about yourself question, tell your career story, and then at the end, so in May I finished up with blah blah blah, and you want to be a bit honest about that situation and address it. Come up with a little spiel that you can do in a couple of sentences, and we've got some tips in a second to kind of how to do that. But admitting something up front that's a little bit icky kind of shows, honesty, integrity, and confidence as well. It shows that you're being upfront about, and look, that wasn't the right fit for me, and I'm excited to take on something new after that role.
Would you say better to get in first, like you get to tell it your way at the start before waiting until they ask, when you might be a bit more panicked, like get in straight away and say it before they're going to prod about it later?
Yeah, it's better to seem confident about it and honest about it rather than like you're trying to hide it and just hope that it doesn't come up. Because I guarantee you, if they don't ask, or even if you answer it but you kind of dance around it a little bit, they're going to walk out of that interview being like, I still feel like I don't know what happened there, and I'm worried that it's something worse than what he said.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And
I'm worried that it's fraud or harassment or something really, really bad.
Yeah, right. You want to rule out any suspicion that they're worried about, get it over with. But for some people who might think, okay, sounds easier said than done to just let them know about it. Give us an example for Eddie's situation. He told us that it was, someone he was managing had a big stuff up or whatever, and his management saw that as his fault, sort of. He should have managed it better, whatever. So give an example of what you would say. Let me do a little example
of what I'd say. So I'd start my career story, and then I would say, so in June, my manager discovered an issue with our customer feedback system, whatever it was, which was the responsibility of someone in my team. Unfortunately, due to the way my manager handled it, the trust really broke down, and I really felt like it was best at that point for us to part ways. So I resigned. It was really unfortunate given how much I loved my time there, but I'm excited to be starting a new chapter.
Boom.
So you can see there how I've given the information. It was an issue with our customer feedback system, whatever. It was so-and-so's responsibility, but I'm not saying, oh, they targeted me, they got rid of me, I was unfairly pushed out. It doesn't sound like a sob story.
It simply is a mini story.
But you're giving some information. I didn't just say there was an issue, because that's,
get a bit
too
specific.
Vague.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. You want to add a little bit of detail in there, but I didn't just give them my life story either. And I didn't say, and then this happened and then this happened. It's brief, it's to the point.
Sentences.
They can follow up. Yeah, they can follow up and ask more if they want to, but that's a really good way for you to approach something like that.
Fantastic.
Hey, Interview Boss listeners, if the podcast just isn't doing it for you and you need way more help to prep for your next interview, we have the perfect thing for you. Interview Academy. Em, tell us all about it.
This is huge. This is the love child of Sarah after doing hundreds of one-on-one coaching sessions, finding out what people struggle with the most, common mistakes. Sarah has created the ultimate course that you can do in your own time, self-paced, heaps of modules, videos, interactive quizzes, a workbook that will become your Bible by the end that you can take with you into your interview, because if you're a long-time listener, you know that we endorse taking notes into your interview. It's a game changer.
Check out more about it at interviewboss.com.au/interview academy.
Now we have our second tip. We have no negative emotions about your ex-employer. You don't want to be in there coming off as salty, like, well, what happened was, like, for example, Sarah's example of what to say, you should not say it like this. And then the way my manager handled it, well, there was a communication breakdown, so it was just time for me to leave. Yep, so now I'm here.
Yeah, and I was really pushed out of there.
That just sounds so bad. Salty. You sound like a victim. Like, just, speak objectively, nicely, even if really all you want to scream are profanities at them. The interviewer doesn't need to know that.
Yeah, and it can be really, really hard when you've actually been treated badly on the way out. And I know of lots of people who've genuinely been treated badly on the way out through no fault of their own. But it's important to not let that frustration out in an interview. So I think do what you need to do to process that emotion, with your friends and family. Talk about it to people who are there to support you, so that when you're in an interview, you don't feel like you need to get it off your chest. You're not there to vent to your future employer. You're there to communicate, your value to them. So make sure it doesn't feel like you still haven't had a chance to unload about that stuff.
For sure. Get all of that out of the system before the interview. Tip number 3, we have taking a little responsibility isn't a bad thing, even if you genuinely weren't at fault.
Yeah. It's always a good sign, I guess, to see a candidate reflecting on, how they could have handled things differently, or how their behaviour could have potentially changed a situation, even if it wasn't their fault. I'm a big believer in the motto, if you touched it, you own it. Even if it wasn't your responsibility, if you had anything to do with it, there was something maybe you could have that you could have done to contribute. So taking a little bit of responsibility, in that situation with Eddie, saying, he was in my team, so, I fully understand that I should have been across any issues that were coming up under his area, but at the same time, it wasn't something that I did deliberately. It wasn't something that I ignored. Do you know what I mean? So, like, taking a little bit of that responsibility to say, yes, he was in my team, it was something that I was responsible for. It just shows
that you're not trying to just point blame to anybody but you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't have to feel that you were responsible, but showing a little bit of that and ownership of, even in my situation, looking back now, I found it really hard in that role. And as a result, I really didn't put in, the effort and the energy that I would now. Being able to look back and reflect on that shows a real level of maturity.
We have another piece of advice that isn't just specific to Eddie. This is a bit more general advice, but sometimes it can be helpful to look at contracting or short-term gigs. I know Eddie was talking to us about how do I make that next step with, I've had this 26-year stint. I don't really have anything fresh. Yeah. And this is something you replied to him that just instead of trying to land that full-time career change, you can just bum around in the middle, do some temp things here and there. Why can that be helpful?
Yeah, so I think a lot of, employers might be quite intimidated by seeing that someone was at one company for 26 years and think, can this person learn a new job? And that can be a real concern, because if you've been in the same systems, the same processes, the same company, everything, for that long, they're kind of thinking, will you be able to adapt? And by doing some short-term work, not only does it give you some more recent references, things like that.
Also, better reference. This was another thing he spoke about. How do you handle when, obviously he didn't leave on great terms, he's not going to have that reference. This solves that problem as well. If you get some contract temp work, you've got a recent reference who's going to vouch for you.
Yes, exactly. But again, in those situations, even to get that temp work, you might find that you come up with that reference problem. If you've been upfront about it and said, this is why I left, this was the issue I had with that most recent manager, they're more likely to be understanding about references once you get to that point, because you're not springing it on them. Imagine, I just hid everything and then I just said, I just got sick of it and I left. And then once it comes to references, you're going, okay, who was your most recent manager? And I'm like, And
you're stalling and acting sus. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're going to think, what's going on? And then I go, well, actually, it wasn't a great relationship when I left. And you're like, hold on, this is new information.
Yeah.
If you address it up front, then later on in the process, as I mentioned to you, unfortunately, I didn't leave on the greatest terms with my most recent manager, but my manager before that, here's their contact information. Here's another senior person in the team that you could talk to. They're more likely to be understanding. Personality clashes, issues like that happen in workplaces all the time. And people understand that just because you weren't someone's superstar doesn't mean you're going to be no good at your next job. But you're going to have the best chance of them understanding that if you're really upfront about it to begin with.
That's all we have time for today, but I hope you guys found this episode valuable. I'm sure there's people out there that have found themselves in one of these tricky situations and are not knowing how to proceed with their future interviewers. But I think the key out of all of this is to be honest upfront, own it, and don't try and lie. Just be honest.
Totally. It can even apply if you've been made redundant or if your contract was cut short, all those kinds of things. Or if you lost hours as a casual.
Or took some time off to you had burnout, same kind of things. If people are asking about gaps in your employment, just ask. I feel like even I have this weird fear that, say after I graduate, if I take 6 months to just work in hospo and get some money before I think about anything, in my head I'm like, oh my God, people are going to look at my resume and be like, oh, 6 months off? You've lost all your skills. They must have vanished. You are irrelevant. Who is she? But really, in an interview, if they said, oh, so what have you been doing? And I said, oh, yeah, so I've just taken 6 months to just, relax and earn some money. Supporting myself at uni was tough, so I've just wanted to set myself up a little safety net before I start going hard on the job applications. They would be like, amazing, reasonable, great, move on.
Exactly. Yeah. You've just got to have storytelling all over again, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've done a full circle back to the storytelling.
Storytelling, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, that's why we did it as one of our first episodes. It's everything.
All right, that's it. We'll be back in your ears next week. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Interview Boss. If you like this episode and you want to support us, go ahead and hit follow on Spotify or subscribe in Apple. That's how we can hit the charts so we can help even more people. For more advice, inspiration, and a supportive community, check us out on Instagram @InterviewBoss.
We've been your job search besties and helped you in some way. There's a cool way you can support the show. Shout us a virtual coffee.
We get a huge kick out of reading all of your success stories. Head to buymeacoffee.com/interviewboss and shout us a cuppa.
If you keep us caffeinated, we can keep the content coming.